Hello, I'm Lord Torvas, and welcome to this video. I have seen lots of threads on the forums complaining about rares crashing, like for instance party hats, masks, Easter eggs, Santas, what have you. The party hats have bounced back a little bit, but they're probably going to continue to crash, and there's a very logical reason for this. The reason is that rares are called a fiat currency. What a fiat currency is an economics term which refers to a currency that's not backed by anything. It's just like valuable for the sake of being valuable. It doesn't really have any reason to be valuable. So the only true currency is actual supplies and commodities that are universally in demand that people have to buy. So for example, prayer potions will always have a constant value within the game. Food will always have a constant value within the game. So will ingredients for potions such as potato cacti, grenwall, spikes, what have you. So if you have a huge cash pile, I'd highly recommend you invest it into these kind of supplies rather than rares, because rares really have no value. The only reason the rares have value is because they're rare and because people are dumping their money into it, investing, and it's building a bubble in the rares, and that bubble has popped recently. The reason why people were drawn towards investing in the rares in the first place is because all the supplies were crashing really badly and being depressed in value because of all the bots which were flooding the market with it. So what you have is you have this massive supply of it, and you have a very small demand because lots of players were just botting and dumping way more supplies into the economic system than they were consuming supplies. So what ends up happening is all the supply prices crash quite severely, and then the typical player looks at the market and they go, oh my god, everything's crashing, what am I going to do with my money? Oh, I'll put it in rares because they're valuable. And basically what happened is all these people started pooling their money into rares, and it exponentially fed the value of the rares. And lots of people who are botting, they would have multiple accounts, and all the wealth created on those accounts would drastically devaluate the price of supplies, and all that money would be funneled to one central account, and then that central account would have, let's say, 6 billion GP on it, right? You can't store that just in cash alone. So what you're going to have to do is you have to find valuable items to invest in. Items like Dragon Fire Shield, Dragon Equipment, Bandos, just supplies in general were all crashing quite severely. So the only true investment you can make is invest into rares. So what would happen is all these people with tons and tons of money, like just ridiculous amounts, would pour their money into rares. And then what happened with the bot nuke and that is that the supply of bots got choked off, and then everyone went, I wonder what's going to happen, because all of a sudden our supply is going to dry up pretty much instantly, while the demand remains relatively the same, because people are still going to play the game, and probably more people are actually going to join the game now that the bots are gone, because it's more fun, right? So your demand's probably going to increase maybe 25%, while your supply is like choked right in half. And what's going to happen to the price of all these supplies, like prayer potions and grenwall spikes and potato cacti? Well, of course they're going to skyrocket, especially the things they're botted. And players are not oblivious to this fact, so they see their party hat sitting in their bank, they go, well, how can I make a lot more money? Because my party hat's currently at the price ceiling of, what, 2.147 billion GP, right? So they go, how can I make a ton of money off of this investment, which has pretty much hit the peak of what it's worth? Well, I'm going to sell the party hat, and I'm going to buy up into these supplies, and then all the items that are currently in the economic system from the bots are going to dry up, and then what's going to happen? There's going to be a huge price rise. And if you look at the GE graphs, this is precisely what happened. All these people sold the party hats, the price crashed, and then they poured their money into investments and started buying it up. So what they actually did is they unintentionally, or probably intentionally, they fueled the rise of these commodities a lot faster than it would actually normally happen. So all this wealth is being taken out of the rares market and placed right into the supplies market because they know the bots aren't coming back. If you just look at the technology of the cluster flutter, I think it was called, pretty strange name they gave it, but anyways, what they did is they encrypted the packets in which the bots rely on, and the reason how bots would thrive is they'd inject little hooks into the code, and they'd be able to look at this code and they'd be able to predict what would happen. So they could put a hook into the code and they say, oh, my health has fallen to 400 HP, right? So I'm going to eat a monkfish now. And then, oh, I'm being hurt by the dragon's breath, so I'm going to drink an anti-fire potion. They'd actually be able to tell that by looking at the code. Now it's all encrypted, so the bot would walk next to the dragon would attack it and go, what the hell is happening? And then the bot would die and respawn in Lumbridge because it doesn't understand what the hell is happening because its script can't understand the code. And Jagex gave good explanation for this, and the bots are staying down there, stay down for a while. So what we're going to see is a continuing rise in commodities until they stabilize. I think they're pretty close to stabilizing. And these rares are going to continue to fall for a little while, and then they're probably going to remain pretty flat, because people are going to say, well, the supplies aren't crashing anymore, so let's put my money in supplies. And also the fact is that people aren't going to have billions like they did in the botting days, where they'd have a bunch of bots funneling all their money to one account, for instance, and then that account buys rares. They'd maybe have a more modest amount, like 200 million, 300 million, 400 million, and you can't really buy a ton of rares for all that. So what you're going to do is you're going to say, okay, I'm going to buy 10 Bandos chestplates, or I'm going to buy 1,000 Grenwall spikes, or I'm going to buy 1,000 prayer potions, because these items have a concrete value that's constantly maintained. And if you just look at the real world system, you can see evidence of this. Like if you looked at Zimbabwe, the currency there, their government started printing it like crazy, right? And that was a fiat currency, it wasn't backed by anything, just like rares are. Because rares have no purpose or utility, like besides just showing off, right? But let's say a commodity in the real world, like oil or food, they have a constant value, I guess. Like the value changes, fluctuates a bit, but it doesn't fluctuate like by a factor of like 5,000%, like a fiat currency could fluctuate. So in Zimbabwe, the people who had stocks of the fiat currency of whatever the Zimbabwean currency was called, basically the government printed tons of money, caused hyperinflation, which made the money of the value of the money decrease exponentially. There was actually like a 1 trillion% inflation, which meant that the currency was devalued, like it lost a ton of value. But the people in Zimbabwe that had, let's say, tons of food or tons of oil stockpiled were totally fine, because they can just liquidate that for like whatever the fiat currency was currently worth. So let's say someone has $1,000 of Zimbabwean money, and then all of a sudden the hyperinflation happens, and then that money's worth. Okay, so initially, let's say with that $1,000 of Zimbabwean currency, you could buy 10 loaves of bread, for instance. Okay, and the hyperinflation starts, and then once that ends, they can only buy a fraction of a slice of bread with that money. But the person who had the 10 loaves can sell those 10 loaves for the exact same value in like other supplies, but the person who invests in the fiat currency loses out big time. And rares in Runescape, they really have no utility or anything. So economically, the best investment you can make is in true currencies, which are the supplies and commodities, because they're not going to be affected by bots anymore, and they're going to be in constant supply. So there's going to be inflation in Runescape, of course, right? Because more money's added to the game, but then also lots of items are added to the game. So Runescape has really relatively modest inflation. Thanks for watching this video. I hope you found my economic analysis of RuneScape's economy helpful.